All right, let's talk about Wicked. So I'm going to preface this video by saying that I have not watched the original Wicked musical. And so I think it's hard to criticize the story. And from what I've heard and read, like this movie is extremely faithful to the original musical. And since it's like only the first half, I don't really think I can totally criticize the story. But from what I've seen so far from Wicked Part 1, it felt like weirdly thin for a 2.5 hour minute runtime. And I assume like the second part is going to be somewhere in the same like length. But I don't know, like Elphaba and Glinda's friendship is by far my most like favorite part of the movie. But I don't think it has an insane amount of like time or depth. And like the main thrust of the story is like the B plot, where like Elphaba is like trying to like stand up to like the big society, the Wizard of Oz, right, and like getting branded as this like wicked witch of the West. It's like this origin story, right, of how she became to be this. And it feels like the escalation leading to that doesn't match like the legend of it, of like the Wicked Witch of the West. You know, like it's like this whole thing in American culture and like the original Wizard of Oz movie, right? Like, and if this is like the origin story for Elphaba, for like the Wicked Witch, it feels like too small and too little of a thing. And maybe like that's part of it, and like maybe that's like what the point is, and it's unfair that like she becomes this wicked witch unjustly, and that we'll see like in the second part, like that's like the point that they're trying to make. That like it's wickedness is something thrust upon them. That's something that Glinda says in the beginning of the movie. But overall, like it feels weirdly empty or small. And like the Wizard of Oz reveal, like it just falls kind of flat because like everyone knows that it's coming, but they kind of just it felt like they went through the motions. Like, oh, like we know that you know this is gonna happen, so we're just gonna kind of like get through it without much suspense. It didn't feel like there was anything special or interesting or compelling to those reveals. And the reveal of just like, oh, like you're using animals as like slaves and stuff is weird. I think maybe like they didn't do a good enough job of setting up in the beginning that like, oh, like animals are equal and like they should like live in this world and are like an integral part of this world. Like it didn't just like have any of that set up. It just I felt like weird about that. Like even in the beginning, when Elphaba's a child, it feels like animals are servants or just kind of like they're still not on human levels. I don't know. It feels weird and felt like not well set up, or at least to me, it wasn't made clear. I felt like the production design and like the color, it feels like it's pretty cool, pretty good overall. I feel like John Chu is pretty good at that. These big spectacle things and nice, pretty, colorful things that pop off the screen. The CGI backgrounds, they're like not too distracting for the most part. So like I wasn't. That was something I was more worried about. Like looking at the trailers, I was like, oh, like this doesn't look too great. But like the movie looked pretty good. It helps that like a lot of it was just kind of like in like a university campus. But kind of getting to like the main characters, Elphaba, Glinda. I think Elphaba is a fine character. Like they do a good job of making you feel for her. Like especially like there's this like I think maybe the midpoint of the movie is like this party scene, and it's super good. Like a great use of restraint. It's mostly a silent dance scene after we've had like a bunch of spectacles of like blaring music and dancing and stuff. And Cynthia Erivo like does a good job in that scene. So does Ariana Grande. But I do think like this is a relatively easy character to write and to act. Like Elphaba doesn't really have flaws. It's just like, oh, like bad things happen to her, and like she's really sympathetic and everyone is against her kind of thing. And I think she like does a good job. She like hits everything that she's supposed to, but like it's nothing that stands out to me. But I was surprised. I thought like Ariana Grande, like she was like excellent as Glinda. And I'm not really sure what she's supposed to fully be in like the original musical, or like if she's like a faithful whatever in comparison to Kristen Chenoweth. But I think her character is like a much more difficult task. Like she's mean and selfish, but like kind of has a heart, and like she has to like toe the line between being this like dumb, annoying, like shallow, surface level popular girl and being someone who like does care and does like grow and learn. And I think like because there's more going on there, it's like interesting to watch, compelling to watch, and like I wanted to root for her. And I think it's easy for like this kind of character to be like grating and annoying, especially for like 2.5 hours where she's kind of the main character. But like Grande has like a specific time of like charm and like humanity and like a little bit of an edge and like goofiness that makes it work. And I feel like her comedic timing is like it's quite good here. And I think singing wise, the originals, Kristen Chenoweth and Idina Menzel, like those versions still knock it out of the park. The movie, like I don't think it holds like a candle to the original Broadway performances, and that's like okay. Like I don't think I was going into the movie like hoping for something better. I do think some of the songs. Let's talk about some of the songs. Like in the beginning, the first two songs I think are duds. No One Mourns the Wicked, the opening number, and The Wizard and I, like Cynthia Erivo's like first like big song. they were kind of like lifeless and dull and just like, oh, like she's walking around and singing. What is this feeling is like the best number in the movie. Like it's quick, it's fun, the editing is snappy. It's also like just an up tempo fun song. It's like it's easy to like I think nail that one, and it was fantastic. It was great. I think Ariana Grande's Charm like really carries popularly. Like that one's a fun one too. Dancing Through Life is also very good. Like that one's just like really inventive with like the camera work and also like the set. It's like kind of moving and changing all around. And I was like some of these like longer shots. I was like wow, like I'm impressed that people were like hitting it all on this. Like I don't really care about I'm Not That Girl. Like the romance didn't really like do it for me. And I think that's part of it. Just like oh, it's the first half of the musical. It's basically nothing and inconsequential in like the first act. And so like it'll definitely mean more in the second part. But yeah. And then I think the last thing that was annoying. This is like a very small nitpick. But I was talking to my sister and like she didn't really think Defying Gravity really like landed towards the ending. Like it didn't feel like it was like the punch that it needed to be. Like musically, I think it's supposed to be this big belting song, and it was good and whatever. But something that really annoyed me that felt like just dynamic wise, it wasn't up there. Was like the drums are just a simple 4/4 beat with like the kick on the 1 and the snare on the 3, and it just felt like so normal and like not hyper emotional at all. And like maybe that's kind of just me nitpicking, but I was like, man, like I feel like this is supposed to be a big moment, but it's not really because of those dynamics there in the music. And overall, like I liked parts of this movie. Like it's a spectacle, it's big, it's a theater movie for sure, so it's like an experience that is fun, I think. But it's pretty long and nothing like there's not a lot that actually happens in like this big epic origin story kind of thing. But I do want to kind of like keep my like mind open for like part 2. Maybe part 2 is really going to bring it home and answer a lot of the questions that I have. But overall, it's maybe like mid, I guess.